February 3rd. All right, so we'll try that again. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Dowry, and I have the pleasure of serving as receiver for the city of Chester. Today is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Just so happens to be my daughter's 19th birthday. So let's have a great meeting here. I joined here today for the Municipal Financial Recovery Advisory Committee meeting. On behalf of the city of Chester, we are joined by Mayor Roots. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We are expecting Councilman Davis to join us, just his first meeting, so maybe a minute or two late here, but I'm sure he'll be on today. And on behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Governor's Office and Department of Community and Economic Development, Deputy Director, Mr. Andrew Sheaf. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All right, and on behalf of Delaware County Council, Ms. Kelly Diaz. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And as always, joined here by Chief of Staff for this engagement, Mr. Vijay Kapoor, and Executive Assistant, Mr. Cody Dill. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get started. Today's agenda is brief, but we do have a presentation to share. Before we get into that, Mr. Dill, good to see that the internet is working in your area and everybody was able to make it through this storm okay. Hopefully it's lightened up where you are by now. But would you mind sharing any public comment that we've received since the last meeting?
Sure. And actually, before I do that, Mr. Receiver, I just wanted to also explain how the public can access all of our infract videos, as well as some of the other presentations we've given over the months and years that we've been doing this as well, if that's okay. Just want to share my screen real quick here. Okay. Can everybody see this? Okay, great. So if you go to our website, chesterreceivership.com, again, this is for anybody that you may know someone who has trouble accessing the videos, or you're just looking for an archive of them. This will be ways that you can access them easily from our website. So with this, just need to move something here. So on this, if you go to our infract tab, it'll take you to the page that covers the information for this committee. You scroll down just a little bit, some general information in here. And if you look in the second paragraph, the first link of interest down here where it says these meetings are live streamed via the receiver's Facebook page, which can be found at Office of the Receiver, City of Chester /Facebook. Now, if you click that link, I know there were some questions, I believe it was at a previous city council meeting, that once you access this, it asks you to log in. And I know not everyone has Facebook or may not want to use the app or give their information in this way, but you can bypass this. So once this screen pops up, you'll see this X here in the top right corner of this. If you just click that X, you can proceed right to our page and still access the meeting. So you can still see it live. All of these videos are still archived on our videos page. So that does still work even if you do not have a Facebook account. So I want to make that first note for the public. And then if we go back to our receivership website page here, there's also a link at the bottom of the second paragraph. It's all highlighted in dark here. If you click this link, it's the very last button. There's the sentence reads, you can also find the infract recordings from before February 2nd, 22nd of 2022 on a previous YouTube link that we no longer have access to. The videos are still there, and I'll show you this one as well. So this has videos from before February of 2022. If it'll load for me. So it has videos here from before February of 2022. But if you also go back to the website page, and then this one is for the more recent ones, anything after February of 2022 can be found at this link. Admittedly, I don't have the expertise of the person who was handling this page previously, so mine is not organized as well or look as fancy, but all of the content is still here as well for public viewings. They're all archived here. Any video can be watched, viewed as many times as you would like. And that is all I have for this. All right. So just wanted to go over that for the public, just so they have that access to the information. If there are any questions, you can share that with friends, family who may have not previously known how to access it. This is how it can be done.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dill. I really appreciate the tutorial and would appreciate one edit to the post February 22 page. Why do I have the angry face and VJ gets two smiley faces? Let's let's clean that up a bit. But I'll be back up. Was there any were were there any questions from the committee about accessing those videos? I'm sorry, Mr. Dill, was there any public comment received since the last meeting?
So our email address hasn't received any public comments. A few weeks back, Mr. Kapoor and yourself gave the presentation regarding the Supreme Court ruling. There were just a few simple questions from that. I don't know if this will be the forum to cover those or not, or if it will be done at a future date. I had sent them in the agenda. Would you like to go over those now, or should we save them for another time?
How about you share what the comments were, and I
Sure.
believe today's presentation will address both of them.
Okay, perfect. So the first one, there was a few people asking just for a further explanation of what the Roots Compromise was, how it came about, what was included in it, and how it played a role in everything. And the second one was just asking for a further explanation of the change to the residency requirement for employees of the city.
All right, so we'll proceed with today's presentation, and if there's any follow-up, if there are any follow-up questions to the presentation, we'll go from there. Mr. Kapoor, would you like to combine any receivership updates along with your presentation, or do you have some additional comments?
Yeah, Mr. Receiver, I think that's fine. I think I can whenever it's my turn to go through the presentation, I'll go ahead and give some highlights and then get into it.
Well, I'll just encourage the public to continue to reach out to Mr. Dill, our website, myself directly to engage. There's quite a bit going on, and we love to meet with residents in small groups at your convenience. And then I will also encourage folks to continue to visit the City of Chester's website to check out the vacancies and refer a friend to apply. Mr. Kapoor, would you go ahead and proceed with today's presentation?
Sure, I would be happy to. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Make sure folks can see it. Cody, I also really liked how you showed the Facebook page. We were actually watching ourselves live on Facebook. That's pretty deep. Let me go ahead and put this up here, just make sure folks can see it. Can everyone see that? Someone give me a thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vijay Kapoor. I serve as the Chief of Staff for the receiver. And what I have for you all today is just kind of a couple of short presentation on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision that we did a presentation a couple weeks ago on, as well as the City of Chester charter issues that came up in January and really kind of came up as part of the situation that all of us were dealing with earlier, that we wanted to bring to the attention of the public, wanted to bring the attention of Chester City elected officials as we have over the past couple of weeks, and just wanted to raise them because they are important for Chester City governance. Once the receiver is gone. So let me first kind of talk a little bit and give folks the facts on this. I'm not going to dwell too long on it, but on January 29th, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did issue its decision in the plan modification matter, and what that did was it affirmed the Commonwealth Court decision, which implemented the receiver's plan modification. 2 days later, on January 31st, we explained the opinion. We did basically a Facebook Live webinar on what that opinion was. And folks who haven't had a chance to see that, who might be interested, you can go to the receiver's Facebook page, which you may be on right now, and scroll down, or you can go to the YouTube site that we have over here, and that'll take you straight to the presentation. You can also find the PowerPoint from the presentation at chesterreceivership.com/MFRAC. Mr. Deal showed you that page. If you kept scrolling down, you would see where the documents were. There's a pretty lengthy PowerPoint in there for folks who might be interested. During that presentation, I actually mentioned a conflict in the city's charter regarding whether it was the right of the mayor or city council to appoint department heads. Now, because of that Supreme Court decision, this issue is moot. It means it doesn't matter now for the moment, but it's likely going to reoccur once Chester is out of receivership unless it's addressed. And we're going to talk about that in the second part of the presentation today. And so the purpose of what we're trying to do today is to explain to the public what that city charter conflict is, and why it needs to be addressed. And to be very clear, the city charter we're talking about here is effectively the city of Chester's constitution. We're not talking about the charter school. We're talking about the city of Chester's home rule charter. So just to start really quickly with the court decision, these again are the practical impact of the court decision, and I'll answer the two questions that were raised in the public comment that Mr. Deal mentioned as I go through this. The first practical impact of the court decision was the chief of staff will report to the receiver and to the mayor. The second is that city elected officials may contact the chief of staff for the purposes of inquiry, but they shall not direct the chief of staff relating to any matter in the line of his responsibilities. So basically what we're doing here is setting up a very clear chain of command that will show the org chart in a moment. The administrative duties of elected officials with respect to day-to-day operations are suspended. So that includes, but not limited to serving as a department head, and other things like participating in job candidate interviews or labor negotiations. And it's up to the chief of staff to assign those administrative duties to qualified employees and contractors. Also, city elected officials may not direct a city employee relating to any matter in the line of the city's, in the employee's employment. If an elected official does so, directs or requests that a city employee perform a task, that employee must notify the chief of staff immediately. Continued here, city employees must follow the directives of the chief of staff relating to any matter in the line of their employment. City elected officials may not interfere with the directives of the receiver. All city elected officials, employees, and contractors are required to provide any information in furtherance of their responsibilities that the receiver or the chief of staff requests, and that the receiver has the sole authority regarding employee hiring and termination, including those employees appointed by city elected officials per the home rule charter. So here is what we'll call the organizational chart, kind of the high-level organizational chart after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision. What you have here is the mayor and the receiver. Excuse me. Let's start at the sort of the base of the org chart. We have all other city employees other than the chief of staff. So this is all city employees from department heads to line workers. They all report through management to the chief of staff. The chief of staff is the individual who all employees will directly, through their management, report to. And then the chief of staff reports to both the mayor and to the receiver. You can see the line over here. Other city council members, they will continue to serve in their legislative role, but you'll see there's no, they're not within the chain of command. And as I've noted in the prior presentation, and again, for individuals who may not be so familiar with Chester, with the exception of the receiver, this is how most Pennsylvania cities operate. This is actually nothing sort of out of the ordinary. It is new for Chester, of course, but it's pretty much how every other city in Pennsylvania runs. Now, there was a question earlier about what the Roots Compromise was. When the receiver initially filed the plan modification, you did not have the mayor here. You had receiver, chief of staff, and all other city employees. So what was done over here as part of, again, we're referring to the Roots Compromise because at that time, city council member, now Mayor Roots, proposed this to the receiver, and the receiver agreed, allowed there to be what I would call dual reporting. So you have both the mayor as well as the receiver being the bosses of the chief of staff. The other city council members would have roles serving on committees that would look at policy issues relating to these departments, but they would not have the role of working in a day-to-day. And again, the compromise was that prior to that suggestion, you just had the receiver here, and you did not have the mayor. Regarding the question about the residency requirement, so what was done over there in the plan modification, I would really characterize as kind of nothing more than just kind of administration. So if you remember under the, let me just kind of click back over here, under the plan modification, the receiver has the sole authority regarding employee hiring and termination. And so in the city charter, there is a provision that has a residency requirement and that allows members of city council to waive that requirement in their essentially in their discretion, should they believe that that there isn't anyone in the city who is qualified for the position, and they've done so on a pretty regular basis, to be honest. In order to make sure that like we have that provision tracks with the sole authority regarding hiring and termination, all it really does is say the receiver shall have the ability to decide, have the ability to waive that requirement. So it's really just nothing more than an administrative change. If we hadn't done that, you would have had this weird situation where the receiver would have the ability to hire and fire, but then you would have council having the ability to decide whether or not to waive it, which doesn't make any sense in that situation. So that's really all that is, and that's in the plan modification. So let's move to the city charter provision conflict and talk about kind of, I think, the meat of what we're talking about today. This is an important issue. It's kind of an issue that I don't think we've really talked about in the past, but it is something that it is important. Yes, Mr. Receiver.
I'm sorry, before we jump into the second or what's really at hand here, to the first part of the presentation, which was kind of a recap of what we talked about last week. Do any of the committee members have any questions about what was explained or presented for the Supreme Court decision?
I do not.
No, I don't. It seems clear to me.
Sorry about that, Mr. Kapoor. Please continue.
Nope, not a problem at all. So let's talk about the city charter issue, and here that this has to do with, again, what's going on, like how the city is really structured to be governed, right? And this really goes to kind of the heart of an issue that did arise in January of this year, and will likely arise again once receivership is over. So there are two sections of the city charter that relate to the appointment of city council members as department heads. And again, as I said before, the city charter is kind of like the city's like constitution. It is like the foundational governing document, and everything flows from it. And city council can't just decide to amend it one day. It's like amending the U.S. Constitution or the Pennsylvania Constitution. There's a process to that that one would have to go through. And so again, this is kind of like the foundational document. And I want to read this because we've got two sections in here that actually conflict. Section 11.6-603 says, quote, "At the annual organizational meeting of council, the mayor may assign to each council member a responsibility as department head of one or more departments or agencies of the city government." So this says the mayor may. Now, section 11.6-601, which is only two provisions next to this one, says, quote, "The council may, by ordinance, create, alter, or abolish and prescribe the functions of city departments, agencies, and offices not inconsistent with the general laws or this charter, and designate department heads from city council." So you've got two provisions almost next to each other. They're only separated by one provision, which apparently give to the mayor and council the ability to designate members as department heads. Now, council has to do it by ordinance. The mayor does not have to do it by ordinance, but what happens when the mayor and council disagree? Because there's the possibility that could happen. And in fact, that actually did happen on January 2nd of 2024. At the city's organization meeting on January 2nd of 2024, Mayor Roots appointed Councilwoman West as a department head, and he declined to appoint any other council member as a department head. City council then voted 4-1, Mayor Roots against, to appoint all other council members as department heads. And I'll say that city council didn't take this action via ordinance. Again, if we go here before, it really clearly says council may by ordinance. They didn't do it by ordinance as the charter required them to do so. So there was an argument that what their action was void, but they might have made these assignments via ordinance at a later date, right? They might have fixed that at a later date. I will say I'm not sure why the solicitor didn't stop it at that point. That's something that, in my opinion, should have been done. But be it as it may, that continued. As a result of these actions, until the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision, which again, remember, it didn't happen until January 27th, it wasn't clear who the department heads were, which is, an understatement. It's a bad problem, right? Because you can't really tell who was in charge. And that's not something we brought to MFRAC's attention. It's not something that we were talking publicly about. But it was an issue. It was a big issue about whether or not who folks thought, whether or not city council members thought they were department heads. The fact that you've got this conflicting language in a charter is really unusual. It is it's not something you see. I have my own personal suspicions as to why this got in here. It certainly would support whatever political machine may be there, right? If you've got a council that supports the mayor, they're certainly not going to step on the mayor's toes. But if you get someone who's elected as a mayor who may not be part of a machine and the machine wants to try and overrule them, you've got that. So this is, again, that's nothing but my own kind of, curiosity here and my own, this is my personal kind of, that's the only logical explanation that sort of makes sense to me as to why you would have that. Because otherwise this makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense at all. And it is a problem, right? Because again, without that Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision, we would have still been confused as to, again, who was in charge. And why we care about this and why we're sharing it with the public, and we shared this with the mayor, we shared this with elected officials, with the members of city council as well, kind of in the same way we're doing here. We care because once we're gone, once the receiver is gone and all of us are gone from over here, the keys are going to be handed back over to the residents and the elected officials of Chester. And the city charter is going to be again in full effect. And what's likely to happen is this issue is going to happen again, right? And our main concern here is that the time after receivership is going to be critically important for the city. You are going to be, managing a plan of adjustment, a recovery plan. It's going to be a very, very sensitive time. You can see it with cities that come out of bankruptcy and otherwise. And if you've got a conflict as to kind of who's in charge or what's really going on over here, that's going to be extremely disruptive to ensure that the city operates smoothly. And again, to be clear, and the receiver can certainly speak for himself should he wish on this, but we may have an opinion as to whether city elected officials should be able to serve as department heads. But after receivership, that question or the question of who should assign them, that's up to the citizens of Chester. Now, again, because of our situation right now, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling, this issue is moot. Again, what's going on right now is this is what's happening right now. This is what's in effect right now. But again, after receivership, this goes away. This is only here because of, at least at the moment, because of the plan modification. So to kind of like conclude over here, you may be asking the question of like, now what? So again, as I said earlier, the potential for this conflict to occur again is really high. This isn't just something that's theoretical. It literally happened last month, and it could happen again. And to address it, really the only way to address it here is the charter needs to be amended, and the residents need to decide what they want the charter to say. The reason we're bringing this up now is that there is a process for amending the city's charter, which is long, and it ultimately needs to be approved by the city's voters. So this is not something that takes place over, I don't think, over a couple of weeks. That process to start, the process of looking at changing the charter and talking about what you would want, can be started either by city council, or by a petition of registered city voters. There is a guide, a DCED guide, on home rule charters, that can be found at this particular website over here, the dced.pa.gov download. Home Rule PA was updated last year. It's provided for all municipalities throughout the state. So I just want to be clear on this. It's not just one that's specifically for Chester, but it's something that you can learn more about the process for what that would look like, and if folks are interested. But again, from our perspective, this is something that we think that the elected officials and residents really do need to take up and address before before receivership is out. So again, once the receiver is gone, you're able to govern your city in a way that is that works. So that is the presentation I had today. I'm happy to answer any questions for folks.
Mr. Kapoor, as usual, a great presentation. Opening it up to the committee for any questions.
I just have one short comment. And that as we look at this charter, that situation which Mr. Kapoor brought up is just one of several conflicts throughout the city charter itself. So the effort that goes into updating the charter, changing the charter, definitely is justified by many of the other contradictions that we found. He just presented one today, and as much as that might be reason to change the charter, once we get through this process, we'll definitely identify many other areas, in the existing charter that need to be addressed.
Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. It may be appropriate at another time have Mr. Leitner speak to the city's chief of staff, Mr. Leitner, speak to the effort to review the city ordinances, the administrative code, and I believe the charter as well, for any conflicts as they present issues with day-to-day operations. But just trying to get all that information in line, and maybe he can provide a status update on how that project is coming along.
I have just a comment, Mr. Receiver.
Please.
A comment or two. Just one. I mean, there's probably about 80 different municipalities in Pennsylvania that have home rule charters. And it's not uncommon for them to amend their charters from time to time. So every primary, every general election, you'll see a handful of referendum votes to the end of amending home rule charters. So just to put that out there, that it is, there's a process, there's a practice, there's precedent, for this type of thing to happen. And just, along those lines too, just to go to the first part of your presentation. Yeah, I do want to stress that is the common structure you'll see in city governments in Pennsylvania, where you have the mayor, chief of staff, employees. Back in the 40s, every city in Pennsylvania had a commission form of government, which was where each council member was a department head. You don't see that anymore. You really don't. It's very few and far between where you still have a charter or a city run by commission form of government. By and large, you see the strong mayor form of government, which is Supreme Court decision, essentially initiated. So just kind of from a statewide perspective, broadly speaking, just sort of wanted to touch on those 2 points.
Thank you for that context. And what is it? The trifurcate, I forget the legal term, but the structure of our government, where the executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch are all separate.
Yeah.
Somebody here smarter than me knows what the formal term is, but it is the common structure by and large. So, but thank you for that additional context, and the fact that amending home rule charters is not foreign to Pennsylvania at all, and that several municipalities go through this every year. Anyone else?
I just had a question. The current charter that has this language? When was this approved by the voters? Was it, I feel like 1980s in my head, but no, that date might be wrong. Was it?
I don't know exactly when those provisions were amended. I do not. I apologize. I can find that out for you.
Okay, it's just interesting as you were talking about the you know, the history of the city and what was going on at that time. It just kind of, I think, provide kind of a snapshot of what was going on at that time if we know the year. So just interesting. Thank you.
Right. I do want to acknowledge that due to technical difficulty, Councilman Davis was not able to formally join us here through the Zoom platform, but that he is logged in via Facebook and watching today's presentation. He and I have been communicating offline. I don't, at least not through me. He hasn't offered any comments, but to the general public, just know that he is tuned in. If there aren't any additional comments, then I think we will wrap up today's meeting. I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today. We will, Mr. Kapoor, were you about to say something?
No, I just wanted to make sure there were I thought Mr. Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to say before we ended or
Oh, yeah, I lost track of how the agenda was rolling. But just to switch gears just a little bit, just on yesterday, the governor came to town. He visited one of our firehouses. I was asked to introduce him upon his arrival. And of course, I had to prepare remarks, which I didn't get much of an opportunity to share because he didn't have much time with us. So I was very abbreviated in my comments and in my welcome. But I think this is a good opportunity for me to share with MFRAC and with those viewing some of the things that I did prepare with my remarks. So let me bring them up real quickly. And basically what I wanted to express was just earlier this week or late last week, the governor gave his budget address. And the budget address is basically when the governor says to the state, here's my wish list of things that I'd like to accomplish. And then the real work goes on within state government to hammer out an agreement for a budget. But, you know, I wanted to first thank him for coming to the city and visiting Chester. It seems like he's a frequent flyer here. He was here last month for the Martin Luther King event. He was here this month for you know, to visit our fire station and express support for the equipment that we have to purchase. I definitely gave credit to State Rep Kazim for making those arrangements. She seems to have established a really close relationship with the governor and the issues here in Chester. So the fact that she could bring him here, you know, as often as he's coming is a very good story. But you know, we all know it's no secret that our city is facing challenges that are so daunting that as mayor, it's important for me to connect with every entity willing to help Chester shed the mistakes of our past and create a new model of what a successful third-class city in Pennsylvania should look like. And there were a few excerpts from Governor Shapiro's budget address that assured me that his administration understands the needs of Chester. One of his quotes is that, and this is coming right from his address, that we need to build a more competitive Pennsylvania that starts in our classrooms, runs through our union halls and our small businesses, our college campuses, and leads to a life of opportunity and a retirement with dignity. We need to keep people safe, make sure they have access to the medical treatments and care that they need, and build communities where they see a future of opportunity. So, you know, I focused on like 5 areas, and one of them was schools. And when you look at Chester, Pennsylvania, and the rankings statewide, our school district ranks number 492 out of 492 school districts that provide rankings. And what the governor says is that he recognizes that there are many paths to success after high school, which includes the military or going into the workforce or starting union apprenticeship programs, and some will go to college. And what he's looking to do is provide record investments in vo-tech education, something we've been screaming for here in Chester. He wants to put money toward apprenticeship programs and on job training with the initiative to train as many as 10,000 new workers here in Pennsylvania over the next 5 years and create thousands of internships over the next 10 years. When he talked about economic development, the governor focused on 5 sectors that Chester is primed to accommodate. One of them is agriculture, believe it or not. We might not look like a farmland. We look like a city with a lot of asphalt and concrete. But just last year, the Secretary of Agriculture came to Chester High School to see the indoor grow operation that they had for vegetables and flowers. It was quite impressive. And the Secretary of Agriculture promised his support to expand that and to get more students understanding what that's about. Can you imagine us growing vegetables right here in the city for the city? Another of the 5 sectors that Chester's primed to accommodate is energy. Right here in Chester, we make electricity right down at that Covanta plant. Electricity is made just about every day, but what we have to do is stop burning trash to make electricity. We have to use sustainable products like solar or even wind. Trash is not the way to go. He mentions life sciences, and we have Widener University who handles that. He mentioned manufacturing, and we know that what Chester makes Chester. That's what we live by. But we don't make much in Chester anymore, and Chester can certainly become a manufacturing base. And I'm thinking about Boeing. I just see that they announced that they're going to be continuing to make the Chinook. I think it's the Chinook helicopter for the next 20 or so years. That's a lot of manufacturing just 1 mile out of our city. I mean, somewhere in Chester, we should be making a bolt, a seat, a windshield, something for those helicopters. There's no excuse that we're not doing that. It's just visioning. And then robotics and technology, you know, as an engineer here, that's 2 areas that's right in my wheelhouse. So I was really happy to see in economic development that the governor addressed those things. And then he's addressing something that we're doing right now, and that's home repair. We have this home renovation program going on where we took $1 million out of the ARPA budget, and we're applying it right here in the streets for people to apply to get as much as $10,000 to make repairs in their homes, whether it's a new heater, windows, roofs, electrical, plumbing. I actually whispered in the governor's ear and say, can you break off another $1 million so we can finish the program? Because we have a waiting list right now, but he's investing $50 million in what he's calling the whole home repairs program. And then he also is investing $100 million, or proposing to invest $100 million in a housing trust fund over the next 4 years to subsidize the construction and rehabilitation of affordable housing. Here in Chester, affordable housing is the thing. We will be an affordable housing town for the foreseeable future. Like many other communities around here who don't want affordable housing in their backyard, we actually welcome it here in Chester. I want to get people out of their 100-year-old homes into new homes affordably, and we can do that. And working with the governor, we're going to make sure we get some of that money. And then he touched on something that hits us all, and that's the health disparities. And as he quotes in his address, the biggest reason why people can't access care is because there aren't enough caregivers. And the reason there aren't enough caregivers is because they're not getting paid enough. And in his budget, he's doing something as simple as making feminine hygiene products available at no cost in our schools, because girls deserve to have peace of mind so they can focus on learning. And we ought to double down on our work to prevent maternal mortality, especially among Black mothers. That came right from our governor. He's talking about what's going on right at the street level here in Chester, Pennsylvania. And he's also looking to increase support for county level mental health services. And in the area of criminal justice, he mentions that his budget invests another $10 million for public defenders to defend people accused of crimes. He's increasing funding to the Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network, who provides free legal services to help seniors and families and Pennsylvanians with disabilities. He's funding a statewide office of gun violence. I just think of making a change group right here in Chester who will probably benefit from that, because that's exactly what they do right here on the streets in Chester, gun violence intervention. And the governor's looking to give local law enforcement agencies and district attorney offices more resources to investigate and prosecute gun-related crimes. I mean, this whole address focused, in my mind, on Chester. You know, as the mayor of Chester, I won't be shy asking for the governor's continued help and assistance as we work through our financial situation here. We've seen him perform a near miracle right up the street, 10 miles from here, 15 miles when I-95 fell apart. In 14 days, he repaired I-95. I'd love to see that governor sprinkle a little of that mojo on Chester as we look to repair our finances, our reputation, and our dignity throughout the city and the county and the state and the country during his time as governor. I know I speak for myself, but also city council, city employees, our residents, all of you viewing, that the connections that we have to make between the city of Chester, the county of Delaware, the state of Pennsylvania, and the federal government of the United States has to increase substantially for us to get out of the situation that we're in right now. As mayor, that's my job. Bring the money, request the money, beg for the money, make sure that Chester has every chance to get out of the situation that we're in right now. It's going to take more than just a receiver and his sharp pencil. It's going to take us as mayor and council to get out here and do the work that it takes to get the money that's out there to get the city back in the shape that it's in. So those were some of the comments I wished I could have shared yesterday. Didn't have the time to do it. I just took advantage of this opportunity to share. I hope I wasn't out of line in sharing those at the MFRAC meeting, but it's off my chest now. So thank you, guys.
No, Mayor, I really appreciate and welcome your comments. So this engagement, feedback, and this is what this committee, that is what this committee is all about, right? We have state, county, and city officials on a bi-weekly meeting. And what better use of our time to engage on issues of relevance to the city and what really is going on. So much of our presentations, as you said, from my office, I'm focused on financial recovery and have a very narrow focus, but it's all hand in hand. So how is the school district doing? What is community and economic development? What is the long-term strategy to raise the city's tax base to complement the efforts on the operational side? So it's all hand in hand, and we really need to be discussing these matters here. So I'm not going to try to upstage you and share additional comments. Let me shut up and ask if the committee have any questions for Mayor Roots. All right, well, Mayor Roots, we will leave it at that with the last word. Thank you. We will reconvene again on February 27th at 1 p.m. Unless especially convened for some important matter. But other than that, I will see everybody in 2 weeks. Have a good day.
Thanks.